Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The search begins. Last Halloween, the world had been cloaked in a veil of darkness, but this year, the shadows felt more tangible, more alive. Paige, Brad, Caitlin, and Mary Kate had gathered at the edge of the woods, their breaths visible in the crisp autumn air, each exhale a ghostly reminder of the chill that settled deep in their bones. They had come together, united by a single purpose. To find Ashley, their friend who had vanished into the night a year ago, leaving behind only whispers and unanswered questions. As the wind howled through the trees, it carried with it the echoes of their laughter, now replaced by a heavy silence that pressed down on them like a shroud. Are we really doing this? Caitlin's voice trembled slightly, her eyes darting nervously toward the dark expanse of trees. The moon hung high, casting a silvery glow that illuminated the path ahead, but the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, as if alive with secrets. We have to, Paige replied, her tone firm but her heart racing. She could feel the weight of the night pressing against her, the urgency of their mission igniting a fire of determination within her. We owe it to Ashley. We can't just let her memory fade. Brad, standing slightly apart from the group, shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jacket. I just wish we had more time, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. I mean, what if we don't find her? What if she's gone for good? Mary Kate stepped closer to him, her presence a comforting warmth against the chill. We can't think like that, she said softly, her eyes searching his. We have to believe she's still out there. We have to try. As they stood at the threshold of the woods, the trees loomed like sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching out as if to ensnare them. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a reminder of the cycle of life and death that surrounded them. Paige took a deep breath, steeling herself against the fear that threatened to creep in. Let's go, she said, her voice steady. We'll stick together. No one gets left behind. With that, they stepped into the darkness, the crunch of leaves beneath their feet the only sound breaking the stillness. The path twisted and turned, the moonlight filtering through the branches overhead, casting eerie shadows that danced along the ground. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of their mission pressing down on them like a leaden cloak. As they ventured deeper, the atmosphere shifted. The wind picked up, howling through the trees, creating a haunting melody that sent shivers down their spines. Caitlin shuddered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. This place gives me the creeps, she admitted, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting to see something lurking in the darkness. Just focus on finding Ashley, Brad urged, though his own voice wavered slightly. We can't let fear get the best of us. Easy for you to say, Caitlin shot back, her frustration bubbling to the surface. You're not the one who's going to miss the season finale of Mystery Manor, if we're out here all night. Seriously, Caitlin. Paige interjected, her patience wearing thin. This isn't about a stupid TV show. This is about Ashley. We need to keep our heads in the game. Caitlin opened her mouth to retort but then closed it, her expression softening as she looked at Paige. I know. I can't shake the feeling that we're not alone out here. Mary Kate, who had been silent until now, spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe we should turn back. It's getting late, and we don't know what we're walking into. No, Paige said firmly, her resolve hardening. We can't give up now. We have to keep going. As they pressed on, the trees seemed to close in around them, the darkness thickening like a living entity. The air grew colder, and the wind whispered secrets that sent chills racing down their spines. Each snap of a twig, each rustle of leaves, made their hearts race, the tension palpable as they navigated the winding path. Suddenly, Brad stopped, his eyes wide with fear. Did you hear that? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Caitlin's heart raced as she strained to listen. A low growl echoed through the trees, sending a wave of dread crashing over them. What was that? She breathed, her eyes darting around in panic. Probably just an animal, Paige said, though her voice lacked conviction. We should keep moving. But as they continued, the growling grew louder, more menacing. It was as if the woods themselves were warning them to turn back. Mary Kate's grip tightened on Brad's arm, her nails digging into his skin. I don't like this, she said, her voice trembling. Neither do I, Brad admitted, his bravado fading. Maybe we should. No, Paige interrupted, her voice rising. We can't turn back now. We're so close. We have to find her. The tension in the air crackled like electricity, and for a moment, they stood frozen, caught between fear and determination. Then, with a deep breath, Paige stepped forward, leading the way into the unknown. As they moved deeper into the woods, the shadows seemed to shift and swirl around them, the trees whispering secrets that only they could hear. The growling faded, replaced by an eerie silence that felt suffocating. Each step felt like a leap into the abyss, the darkness pressing in on all sides. Paige, wait, Caitlin called, her voice laced with urgency. What if we're going in circles? What if we're just getting lost? We won't get lost, Paige insisted, though doubt gnawed at her. We just need to keep our eyes open. Ashley could be anywhere. But as they ventured further, the woods began to feel like a labyrinth, twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. The moonlight flickered through the branches, casting ghostly shadows that danced along the ground, and Paige couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Guys, Brad said, his voice low and tense. I think we should. Suddenly, a rustling sound erupted from the underbrush, and they all froze, hearts pounding in their chests. A figure emerged from the shadows, stumbling into the moonlight. It was a girl, her clothes tattered and her hair wild, eyes wide with terror. Ashley. Paige gasped, hope surging through her. But as the girl stepped closer, they could see the fear etched on her face, the way her body trembled as if she were caught between two worlds. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Berry picking panic. The wind howled through the trees, a mournful sound that echoed the unease in Paige's heart. The previous night had been a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty as she, Brad, Caitlin, and Mary Kate had ventured into the dark woods to find their missing friend, Ashley. The shadows had danced ominously around them, and the weight of their mission pressed heavily on their shoulders. They had promised to find Ashley, but the deeper they went, the more the woods seemed to swallow them whole. Now, with the moon hanging high and the chill of the night creeping in, they were left with a decision. To make the best of their time in the woods or let the darkness consume them. Okay, team, Paige said, her voice breaking the silence as she brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Let's collect some berries for Brad's pie. We can't let a little darkness ruin our Halloween spirit, right? Brad perked up at the mention of pie, his eyes lighting with a spark of enthusiasm. You had me at pie. I mean, who doesn't love pie? He grinned, his earlier anxiety momentarily forgotten. Caitlin rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. We need to focus. We're not here to bake pies. We're here to find Ashley. Remember. Mary Kate, who had been quietly observing the trees, chimed in, but we can do both. It'll be like a scavenger hunt. We find berries, and then we find Ashley. 2 birds, 1 stone. Paige laughed, the sound brightening the tense atmosphere. Exactly. Plus, I'm pretty sure Ashley would want us to have some fun while we're at it. She always loved berry picking. Yeah, but she also loved not getting lost in the woods, Caitlin muttered, her brow furrowing as she scanned the darkening landscape. Let's just hurry up and find some berries. With that, the group split up, each taking a different path through the underbrush. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a reminder of the autumn season. Paige wandered deeper into the woods, her fingers brushing against the rough bark of trees as she searched for any sign of the small, red jewels they sought. Hey, did you hear about the berry that got kicked out of the party? She called out, hoping to lighten the mood. It couldn't find its jam. Caitlin groaned from a few feet away. Really, Paige? Berry puns. Now. Come on, it is a classic. Paige laughed, her voice echoing through the trees. I'm just trying to keep the spirits up. Your puns are about as welcome as a mosquito at a picnic, Caitlin shot back, but a small smile tugged at her lips despite herself. Speaking of picnics, I think I see some bushes over here. Mary-Kate called, her voice filled with excitement. She dashed toward a cluster of thorny brambles, her enthusiasm infectious. Careful, Mary-Kate. Those thorns are no joke. Brad warned, but he followed her, eager to see if she had found anything. Paige and Caitlin exchanged a glance, the tension between them palpable. You know, I really think we should be focusing on finding Ashley, Caitlin said, her voice low. What if we forget her? What if we're too late? Paige's heart sank at the thought. We won't forget her. We can't. But maybe if we find some berries, it'll remind us of the good times we had with her. It'll give us hope. Caitlin sighed, her shoulders slumping. I just don't want to lose her again. I can't bear the thought. None of us can, Paige replied softly, her gaze drifting to the ground. But we have to keep moving forward. We owe it to her. As they continued their search, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that twisted and turned like specters among the trees. The woods felt alive, whispering secrets that only the wind could understand. Time slipped away, and soon, Caitlin's watch beeped, a sharp reminder of their dwindling minutes. Guys, we have less than 20 minutes before we risk forgetting Ashley, Caitlin said, her voice rising in urgency. We need to pick up the pace. Okay, let's regroup. Brad called, his voice cutting through the growing panic. Mary-Kate, did you find anything? Just a few berries, but they're not ripe yet. Mary-Kate replied, her excitement dimming. What about you guys? Nothing yet, Caitlin admitted, her heart racing. We need to hurry. We can't let the darkness win. Paige felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Let's split up again. We'll cover more ground that way. Just be careful, okay? The group nodded, their expressions serious as they prepared to fan out once more. As Paige moved deeper into the woods, the shadows grew thicker, and the air felt heavier. She could hear the rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl, but it did little to ease her growing anxiety. Come on, berries, she whispered to herself, pushing through the underbrush. Where are you? Suddenly, she spotted a cluster of bushes heavy with bright red berries, glistening like tiny rubies in the fading light. Guys! Over here! She shouted, her heart racing with excitement. Caitlin and Brad rushed toward her, their expressions a mix of hope and urgency. Mary-Kate followed closely behind, her eyes wide with anticipation. Finally! Caitlin exclaimed, kneeling beside the bushes. These look perfect. Let's pick as many as we can. Brad said, his hands already reaching for the ripe fruit. This is going to be the best pie ever. As they began to gather the berries, laughter bubbled up among them, the tension momentarily forgotten. Paige felt a warmth spread through her chest, a reminder of the bond they shared. But just as quickly as it came, the laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. Do you guys hear that? Mary-Kate asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Paige's heart raced as she strained to listen. The wind had died down, and the woods felt eerily still. Hear what? She asked, her voice trembling. It is like a whisper, Mary-Kate replied, her eyes darting around. Like someone's calling for help. Caitlin's face paled. Ashley. She whispered, her breath hitching in her throat. Stop it, Brad said, trying to sound brave, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. It's just the wind. It's Halloween. We're just spooking ourselves. But Paige couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air felt charged, as if the very trees were holding their breath. We should stick together, she said. Chapter 3. A sense of loss. The wind howled through the trees, a mournful sound that echoed the unease settling in the pit of their stomachs. In the previous chapter, Paige, Brad, Caitlin, and Mary-Kate had ventured into the dark woods, driven by the haunting memory of their friend Ashley, who had vanished on Halloween night a year ago. The moonlight cast ghostly shadows, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. They had tried to distract themselves by searching for berries to bake a pie for Brad, but as time slipped away, the urgency of their mission pressed down on them like a weight. Caitlin's frantic realization that they were running out of time had sent them into a panic, and now, as they stood in the heart of the woods, the reality of their situation began to sink in. Brad leaned against a gnarled tree, his expression clouded with a mixture of sadness and frustration. "What if we never find her?" he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air, heavy and unyielding, as the others turned to him, their faces reflecting the same fear that gnawed at his insides. "Don't say that," Paige replied, her voice firm but laced with uncertainty. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes darting around as if expecting Ashley to materialize from the shadows. "We can't give up hope. We have to keep looking." Caitlin crossed her arms, her brow furrowed. "Hope isn't enough, Paige. We need a plan. We can't just wander around aimlessly. We have to remember why we're here." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the anxiety that had been building since they stepped into the woods. Mary-Kate, ever the optimist, tried to lighten the mood. "Hey, remember last Halloween? We were all dressed up and had the best time. We can't let this ruin our night." She let out a laugh, but it felt forced, like a balloon losing air. The sound echoed through the trees, but instead of lifting their spirits, it only deepened the silence that followed. "Yeah, but that was before." Caitlin's voice trailed off, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The memories of laughter and joy felt like a distant echo, overshadowed by the loss they all felt. Brad shifted uncomfortably, his gaze fixed on the ground. "I just miss her, you know. It's like a part of me is missing too." His admission hung in the air, raw and vulnerable, and the others felt the sting of his words. They all shared that sense of loss, but voicing it made it all the more real. "Let's not forget her," Paige said softly, her eyes glistening in the moonlight. "We owe it to her to keep searching. She wouldn't want us to give up." Caitlin sighed, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "You're right. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We need to honor her memory." "Okay, so what's the plan?" Mary-Kate asked, her enthusiasm returning. "We can't just stand here. Let's head back and regroup. Maybe we'll find something on the way." As they turned to leave, the atmosphere shifted. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in a way that felt almost like a whisper. It was then that they stumbled upon a clearing, and in the center stood an old mansion, its silhouette stark against the night sky. The structure loomed ominously, its windows dark and hollow, like empty eyes watching their every move. "Whoa," Brad breathed, his earlier melancholy momentarily forgotten. "Look at that place. It's like something out of a horror movie." Caitlin stepped forward, her curiosity piqued despite the unease that settled in her stomach. "Should we check it out? It could be a clue. Or maybe even a sign. Or it could be a trap," Paige countered, her instincts kicking in. "We don't know what's inside. We should stick together." Mary-Kate, however, was already moving toward the mansion, her adventurous spirit taking over. "Come on. What's the worst that could happen? We're already in the woods at night, right? This could be fun." "Fun? You think exploring a creepy old mansion is fun?" Caitlin shot back, her voice rising. "What if there's something in there? What if Ashley is?" "Stop it," Brad interrupted, his voice sharp. "We're not going to think like that. We're here to find her, remember? We can't let fear control us." Caitlin opened her mouth to argue but then closed it, the fight leaving her. She felt the weight of their mission pressing down on her, and the thought of Ashley being lost forever was too much to bear. "Fine," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we stick together. No one goes off on their own." As they approached the mansion, the air grew colder, and the scent of damp wood and mildew filled their nostrils. The front door hung slightly ajar, creaking ominously as the wind pushed against it. Brad hesitated, glancing back at the woods behind them. Are we really doing this together? Paige reassured him, her hand resting on his shoulder. We're in this together. With a deep breath, they stepped inside, the door groaning as it swung open. The interior was dark, the only light coming from the moon filtering through the cracked windows. Dust motes danced in the beams, and the air was thick with the smell of neglect and decay. Wow, Mary-Kate whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. This place is amazing. Look at the architecture. Yeah, amazing in a creepy way, Caitlin muttered, her heart racing as she scanned the room. The walls were lined with faded portraits, their subjects staring down at them with expressions that seemed to shift in the dim light. Let's split up and check the first floor, Brad suggested, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. We'll meet back here in 10 minutes. Are you crazy? Caitlin exclaimed. We said we'd stick together. Just for a few minutes, he insisted, his eyes pleading. We'll cover more ground. We can't waste any more time. Reluctantly, the others nodded, and they agreed to meet back in the foyer. As they separated, Caitlin felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the mansion itself was alive, breathing in the darkness. She wandered into a room filled with dusty furniture, the air thick with the scent of mildew. A grand piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. She approached it, running her fingers over the surface, and a chill ran down her spine. The piano felt cold, almost as if it had absorbed the sorrow of the house. Chapter 4. Chapter 4. The Mysterious Mansion. The wind howled through the trees, a mournful sound that echoed the unease in Paige's heart. Just moments ago, she and her friends, Brad, Caitlin, and Mary-Kate, had been searching for berries to bake a pie for Brad, a light-hearted distraction from their more pressing concern. The disappearance of their friend Ashley, who had vanished into these very woods a year ago. The laughter and banter had faded, replaced by a heavy silence as they stumbled upon an old mansion, its silhouette looming against the moonlit sky. The air was thick with tension, and the shadows seemed to whisper secrets of the past. As they stood at the edge of the clearing, the mansion's dark windows stared back at them like empty eyes, daring them to come closer. A chill ran down Paige's spine, but curiosity tugged at her. What do you think happened here? She murmured, glancing at her friends. Probably just a bunch of old stories, Brad replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He shoved his hands deep into his pockets, trying to ward off the creeping dread that had settled over him. I mean, it is just a house, right? Just a house. Caitlin scoffed, her brow furrowed. It looks like something out of a horror movie. We should really think about getting back. Mary-Kate, ever the adventurous spirit, stepped forward, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Come on, it is Halloween. What's the worst that could happen? We could find a ghost or something. Before anyone could respond, a sudden clap of thunder echoed through the woods, startling them. The sky, which had been a serene canvas of stars, darkened ominously, and raindrops began to fall, quickly turning into a torrential downpour. Great. Just great, Caitlin exclaimed, her voice rising above the roar of the rain. Now we're really stuck. Let's get under the porch. Brad shouted, pointing to the overhang that jutted out from the mansion's entrance. The group sprinted toward it, laughter mingling with the sound of the rain as they huddled together, seeking shelter from the storm. The porch creaked beneath their weight, and the scent of damp wood filled the air. They stood close, shivering not just from the cold but from the palpable tension that hung between them. The rain drummed a chaotic rhythm on the roof, drowning out their thoughts as they caught their breath. Now what? Mary-Kate asked, her voice barely audible over the storm. She peered into the darkness beyond the porch, her expression a mix of excitement and fear. Do we go in? I don't know, Caitlin replied, her brow knitted in concern. What if it is dangerous? We don't even know if anyone lives here. Or what if it is haunted? Brad added, a teasing lilt in his voice that didn't quite mask his unease. I mean, we are looking for Ashley, after all. Maybe she's just waiting for us to find her. Paige felt a shiver run down her spine at the mention of Ashley's name. The weight of their quest pressed heavily on her shoulders, and she could feel the eyes of her friends on her, waiting for her to make a decision. We can't just stand here, she said finally, her voice firm despite the uncertainty swirling within her. We need to find out if there's any sign of her. Maybe she came here. Or maybe we'll find something worse, Caitlin muttered, crossing her arms tightly against the chill. Let's just check it out, Mary Kate urged, her enthusiasm infectious. What's the harm in looking? We can always leave if it gets too creepy. With a reluctant nod, Paige stepped forward, her heart racing as she approached the heavy wooden door. The rain had begun to lighten, but the air was thick with an electric tension that made her skin prickle. She reached for the doorknob, its surface cold and unyielding beneath her fingers. Wait. Brad called out, his voice laced with urgency. What if it is locked? Then we'll find another way in, Paige replied, her determination unwavering. She twisted the knob, and to her surprise, the door creaked open, revealing a darkened interior that seemed to swallow the light. See. Easy peasy, Mary Kate said, stepping inside without hesitation. The others followed, their hearts pounding in their chests as they crossed the threshold into the unknown. The air inside was stale, carrying the scent of mildew and something else. Something metallic that made Paige's stomach churn. The dim light filtering through the grimy windows cast eerie shadows across the room, revealing a grand foyer adorned with peeling wallpaper and a staircase that spiraled into darkness. Wow, Brad breathed, his eyes wide as he took in the decaying beauty of the mansion. This place is amazing. Or terrifying, Caitlin countered, her voice barely above a whisper. She clutched her arms tighter around herself, glancing nervously at the shadows that danced along the walls. Let's split up, Mary Kate suggested, her adventurous spirit shining through. We can cover more ground that way. No way, Caitlin shot back, shaking her head vehemently. We stick together. This place gives me the creeps. Fine, Mary Kate huffed, crossing her arms. But we can't just stand here. We need to find something. Anything. That might lead us to Ashley. Paige felt a surge of frustration. They were all feeling the weight of their mission, but the tension between her friends was palpable. Let's just look around, okay? We'll stay close, but we need to keep moving. As they ventured deeper into the mansion, the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick with unspoken fears. They wandered through rooms filled with dust-covered furniture and faded photographs, remnants of lives once lived. Each creak of the floorboards beneath their feet echoed like a heartbeat, amplifying the sense of dread that clung to them. Look at this, Brad said, pointing to a large portrait hanging on the wall. It depicted a stern-looking woman in a flowing gown, her eyes seeming to follow them as they moved. Who do you think she is? Probably the owner, Caitlin replied, her voice trembling slightly. Or maybe she's the ghost haunting this place. Stop it, Paige said, rolling her eyes despite the chill that ran down her spine. We're not here for ghost stories. We're here for Ashley. Right, Brad said, his tone shifting to something more serious. But what if we find something that helps us understand what happened to her? Paige nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of their quest. Let's just keep looking. They moved through the mansion, each room revealing more secrets than the last. A library filled with dusty tomes, a kitchen with rusted pots hanging from the ceiling, and a parlor where the air felt thick. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. The storm's aftermath. The storm had come and gone in a furious rush, leaving the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the remnants of rain-soaked leaves. The four friends stood huddled on the creaking porch of the old mansion, their breaths visible in the cool night air, hearts pounding in unison. Just moments before, they had been caught in the downpour, the sky unleashing its fury upon them, but now the world felt eerily still, as if the storm had washed away not just the rain, but also their resolve. Caitlin's voice broke the silence, a tremor of uncertainty lacing her words. Do we really want to go in there? She gestured toward the darkened doorway, the threshold of a place that felt more like a tomb than a home. I mean, it is not like we have a lot of options, Brad replied, his eyes scanning the shadows that danced just beyond the threshold. Ashley could be in there. We can't just leave her. Mary-Kate, ever the optimist, shrugged. Or it could just be a creepy old house with nothing but dust bunnies and bad memories. We could find a way to call for help instead. Paige, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward, her brow furrowed in thought. But what if she's really in there? What if she's been waiting for us to find her? The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy with the unspoken fear that had been building since they first set foot in the woods. The mansion loomed behind them, its windows like dark eyes watching their every move. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faintest echo of a voice that seemed to call out from within. Brad felt a shiver run down his spine, not from the chill in the air, but from a deep-seated sense of connection he couldn't quite explain. It was as if the house itself was beckoning him, urging him to step inside and uncover its secrets. Let's just take a quick look, he suggested, his voice steadier than he felt. We can't leave without at least checking it out. If we don't find anything, we can head back. Caitlin bit her lip, glancing at the others for support. I don't know, guys. This feels wrong. What if we find something we're not ready to handle? Or what if we find Ashley? Brad countered, his eyes locking onto Caitlin's. We owe it to her to at least try. The silence that followed was thick with tension, each friend lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Mary-Kate stepped forward, her determination shining through. I'm in. We can't just stand here. Let's go. With a reluctant nod, Caitlin followed, and Paige, ever the brave one, took the lead. Brad lingered for a moment, his heart racing as he glanced back at the woods behind them. The trees swayed gently, their branches whispering secrets he couldn't quite decipher. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead, and stepped into the darkness of the mansion. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of mildew and decay. Dust motes floated lazily in the faint light that filtered through the grimy windows, casting an ethereal glow over the grand foyer. The walls were lined with faded portraits, their subjects staring down at the intruders with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Wow, this place is a dump, Paige remarked, wrinkling her nose as she stepped further inside. I can't believe anyone would live here. Maybe they didn't have a choice, Brad muttered, his gaze drawn to a particularly haunting portrait of a woman in a flowing gown, her eyes seeming to follow him as he moved. He felt a strange connection to the image, as if she were somehow linked to Ashley's disappearance. Let's split up, Mary-Kate suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. We can cover more ground that way. Caitlin's eyes widened in alarm. Are you serious? We can't just wander off in this creepy place. Come on, it'll be fine, Paige chimed in, her excitement bubbling over. We'll just check the rooms on this floor and meet back here in 10 minutes. Brad nodded, feeling a surge of adrenaline. I'll check upstairs. If I find anything, I'll call out. Okay, but be careful, Caitlin warned, her brow furrowed with concern. As they split up, Brad felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. The staircase creaked beneath his weight as he ascended, each step echoing in the silence. The upper floor was dimly lit, the air colder and more oppressive. He paused at the first door he came to, its surface worn and splintered. With a deep breath, he pushed it open, revealing a dusty bedroom frozen in time. The bed was unmade, the sheets yellowed with age, and a small vanity stood in the corner, its mirror cracked. He stepped inside, the floorboards groaning beneath him, and felt a chill race down his spine. Ashley. He called out, his voice trembling. Are you here? Silence answered him, thick and suffocating. He moved to the window, peering out at the darkened woods beyond. The trees swayed gently, their branches whispering secrets he couldn't quite grasp. He felt a strange pull, as if something was urging him to look deeper, to uncover the truth hidden within the shadows. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from downstairs, jolting him from his thoughts. His heart raced as he rushed back to the staircase, the sound reverberating through the house like a warning. "Guys!" he shouted, his voice echoing in the empty halls. What was that? He hurried down the stairs, his pulse quickening with each step. The foyer was empty, but the front door stood ajar, swinging slightly in the breeze. "Caitlin. Mary Kate. Paige." His voice trembled with urgency as he stepped outside, the cool night air hitting him like a wave. The storm had left the ground slick and muddy, and he could hear the distant rumble of thunder still lingering in the atmosphere. "Brad." Caitlin's voice called from the side of the house, panic lacing her tone. He rushed toward her, his heart pounding in his chest. "What happened?" he asked, breathless. "I thought I heard something in the kitchen," she said, her eyes wide with fear. "It sounded like someone was moving around." "Maybe it is just the wind," he suggested, though doubt gnawed at him. The house felt alive, its very walls whispering secrets he couldn't decipher. "Or maybe it is something worse," Caitlin replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Mary Kate and Paige emerged from the shadows, their faces pale. Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Chasing Shadows. The wind howled through the trees, a mournful sound that echoed the unease in the hearts of four friends. Just moments ago, they had been laughing, joking about berries and pies, but now, standing on the threshold of the old mansion, the weight of their mission pressed heavily upon them. They were here to find Ashley, their lost friend, who had vanished into the woods a year ago on Halloween night. The storm had come and gone, leaving behind a thick blanket of silence that felt almost suffocating. Paige, Brad, Caitlin, and Mary Kate exchanged glances, each of them grappling with their own fears and doubts. The mansion loomed before them, its dark windows like empty eyes watching their every move. A loud crash from within had startled them, and now, curiosity battled with dread as they contemplated their next move. "Are we really going in there?" Caitlin's voice trembled slightly, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her jacket. "We have to," Brad replied, his tone firm but his eyes betraying a flicker of uncertainty. "If there's any chance Ashley is inside. We can't leave her." Mary Kate nodded, her usual bravado dimmed by the oppressive atmosphere. "Right. Let's just stick together. No one goes off alone." "Agreed," Paige said, her heart racing. "Let's just get this over with." With a collective breath, they stepped onto the creaking porch, the wood groaning beneath their weight as if warning them to turn back. The door stood ajar, a dark maw inviting them into the unknown. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of mildew, a musty reminder of years gone by. Shadows clung to the corners, shifting and swirling as they moved deeper into the mansion. The floorboards creaked underfoot, each sound amplified in the silence, making it feel as though the house itself was alive, watching them with bated breath. "Hello," Brad called out, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. "Ashley. Are you here?" Silence answered him, heavy and oppressive. Caitlin shivered, wrapping her arms around herself as they stepped into the foyer. A grand staircase spiraled upwards, its banister ornate but covered in a thick layer of dust. The walls were lined with faded portraits, their subjects staring down with hollow eyes, as if they were guardians of the secrets hidden within these walls. "Let's split up," Mary Kate suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can cover more ground that way." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Caitlin asked, her brow furrowing. "What if something happens?" "We'll be fine," Paige reassured her, though her own heart raced at the thought of being alone in this eerie place. "Just stay within earshot, okay?" Reluctantly, they agreed, each taking a different path through the mansion. Brad felt a strange pull towards the staircase, as if something or someone was beckoning him upward. He glanced back at the others, who were already disappearing into the shadows, and took a deep breath before ascending the stairs. As he climbed, the air grew colder, wrapping around him like a shroud. He reached the landing and paused, listening intently. The silence was deafening, but then he heard it. A faint whisper, like the rustling of leaves, or perhaps a voice calling his name. Brad. His heart raced as he turned towards the sound, but there was nothing there. Just the darkened hallway stretching out before him, lined with closed doors. He hesitated, a chill creeping down his spine. Was he imagining things? Or was it the house playing tricks on him? Stay focused, he muttered to himself, pushing the door nearest him open. It creaked ominously, revealing a small bedroom, its furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts waiting to be awakened. He stepped inside, scanning the room for any sign of Ashley. The bed was unmade, and a dusty mirror hung on the wall, reflecting his anxious expression back at him. As he moved closer, he caught a glimpse of something on the floor. A small, familiar bracelet glinting in the dim light. His heart dropped. It was Ashley's. "Guys!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the empty halls. "I found something." He turned to leave the room, but as he did, he felt a sudden rush of cold air, as if something had passed through him. A shadow flickered at the edge of his vision, and he spun around, heart pounding. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice trembling. Silence answered him, but the feeling of being watched intensified. He stepped back, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing in around him. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, forming shapes that danced just out of sight. "Brad." Caitlin's voice broke through the tension, and he rushed back into the hallway, clutching the bracelet tightly in his hand. "What did you find?" she asked, her eyes wide with concern. "I found Ashley's bracelet," he said, holding it out for her to see. She was definitely here. Caitlin's face paled, and she glanced down the hallway, as if expecting to see Ashley emerge from the shadows. "We need to find the others," she said urgently. "This place feels wrong." As they turned to head back, a loud crash echoed from downstairs, sending a jolt of fear through them. "What was that?" Caitlin gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Brad replied, his heart racing. "But we should check it out." They hurried down the stairs, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the stillness. As they reached the foyer, they found Mary-Kate and Paige standing near the entrance, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. "What happened?" Brad asked, his voice tense. "We heard something in the basement," Mary-Kate said, her voice shaking. "It sounded like someone was crying." "Crying?" Caitlin echoed, her eyes darting towards the darkened doorway that led to the basement. "Yeah," Paige added, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was really creepy." Brad felt a surge of determination. "We have to check it out. It could be Ashley." "Are you crazy?" Caitlin exclaimed, her eyes wide. "What if it is not her? What if it is something worse?" "We can't just leave her," Brad insisted, his voice firm. "We have to know." With a shared glance of trepidation, they moved towards the basement door. The air grew colder as they descended the stairs, the darkness enveloping them like a thick fog. The sound of muffled sobs grew louder, echoing off the stone walls. "Hello," Brad called out, his voice trembling. "Is someone down there?" The sobbing stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that sent chills down their spines. They reached the bottom of the stairs. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. The Lake of Reflection. The air was thick with tension as Paige, Brad, Caitlin, and Mary-Kate stood in the dimly lit foyer of the mansion, their hearts pounding in sync with the echoes of their footsteps. The storm had passed, leaving behind an unsettling silence that wrapped around them like a shroud. They had come seeking Ashley, their lost friend, but the deeper they ventured into the mansion, the more they felt the weight of their own fears and regrets. Brad's haunted expression lingered in Caitlin's mind, a reminder of the loss they all felt but struggled to articulate. "Let's just find her," Caitlin had said, her voice barely above a whisper, as they stood at the threshold of the unknown. "We can't let her memory fade away like this." Now, as they moved deeper into the mansion, the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, whispering secrets of the past. The air was stale, tinged with the scent of mildew and something else. something metallic that made Caitlin's stomach churn. They turned a corner, and the hallway opened up into a vast room, its ceiling lost to darkness. But what caught their attention was not the room itself. It was the lake. The lake lay before them, a dark expanse of water that mirrored the dim light filtering through the cracked windows. Its surface was eerily still, reflecting their anxious faces like a distorted mirror. The sight sent a shiver down Caitlin's spine, and she instinctively took a step back, her heart racing. "What is this place?" she murmured, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Brad replied, his eyes fixed on the water. "But it feels wrong." Mary-Kate stepped closer to the edge, peering into the depths. "It's just a lake," she said, trying to sound brave. "Maybe it is just a reflection of our fears. Or our regrets," Paige added, crossing her arms tightly against her chest. "We're all feeling something, aren't we?" Caitlin felt a wave of frustration wash over her. "We need to focus. We can't get lost in our feelings right now. We have to find Ashley." As if on cue, a soft splash broke the stillness, drawing their attention. Caitlin turned just in time to see Mary-Kate lean over the edge, her fingers brushing the water's surface. "It's so calm," she said, her voice almost dreamy. "Like it is waiting for something." "Don't get too close," Brad warned, stepping forward. But Caitlin was already lost in her thoughts, her mind racing with images of Ashley's laughter, the way it used to fill their lives with light. She stepped forward, her gaze locked on the water, and in that moment, she felt a strange pull, as if the lake was calling to her. "Caitlin, wait!" Paige shouted, but it was too late. Caitlin, distracted by her memories, took another step, and the ground beneath her shifted. With a gasp, she lost her balance and plunged into the icy water. "Caitlin!" Brad yelled, his heart dropping as he watched her flail, panic etched across her face. The water swallowed her, and for a moment, all he could hear was the rush of his own blood pounding in his ears. Without thinking, he dove in after her, the cold enveloping him like a vice. He could see her struggling beneath the surface, her arms thrashing as she fought against the weight of the water. "Caitlin!" he shouted, his voice muffled by the depths. He swam toward her, his limbs heavy with the chill, but adrenaline surged through him, propelling him forward. Caitlin's eyes widened in terror as she felt the water close over her head. She kicked and clawed at the surface, but it felt like a nightmare she couldn't escape. Just as despair began to creep in, she felt a strong hand grasp her wrist. Brad's face broke through the surface, his expression fierce and determined. "Hold on!" he shouted, pulling her toward him. She clung to him, her fingers digging into his shirt as he kicked hard, propelling them both toward the edge of the lake. The world above was a blur of shadows and light, but she could feel his strength, his unwavering resolve. As they broke the surface, gasping for air, Caitlin felt a rush of gratitude mixed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she sputtered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to." "Just breathe," Brad said, his brow furrowed with concern. "We need to get you out of here." Mary-Kate stood frozen at the edge, her eyes wide with shock. "What do I do?" she cried, torn between helping Brad and the sudden movement of a small frog that had hopped onto the bank, its green skin glistening in the dim light. "Help him!" Paige shouted, snapping Mary-Kate out of her daze. "Get her out!" With a determined nod, Mary-Kate rushed forward, reaching down to grasp Caitlin's arm. Together, they pulled her from the water, and Brad clambered out behind them, dripping and gasping. The three of them collapsed onto the damp ground, panting as they tried to catch their breath. "Are you okay?" Brad asked, his voice low and urgent as he looked Caitlin over, searching for signs of injury. She nodded, though her heart raced with the remnants of fear. "I'm fine," she said, though the chill of the water still clung to her skin. I wasn't thinking. Clearly," Paige said, her voice laced with relief but edged with frustration. "What were you doing?" "I don't know," Caitlin exclaimed, her emotions bubbling to the surface. "I just wanted to remember her." I thought maybe if I looked into the lake, I could see her again. Brad's expression softened, and he reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. You don't need to do that. We're here for her. We'll find her together. Caitlin felt a warmth spread through her at his words, but it was quickly overshadowed by the weight of their situation. But what if we can't? She whispered, her voice cracking. What if we're too late? The group fell silent, the gravity of her words hanging in the air. The lake, once a mere body of water, now felt like a reflection of their fears. Of loss, of failure, of the unknown. Mary Kate, still shaken, finally spoke up. Maybe we should keep looking. There has to be something here that can help us find Ashley. Like what? Paige asked, her brow furrowed. We've searched everywhere. Maybe there are more clues, Mary Kate suggested, her eyes darting around the room. Or something that connects to her. Caitlin nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. We can't give up. Ashley wouldn't want us to. Brad stood, shaking the water from his clothes. Chapter 8. Chapter 8. The Frog's Secret. The air was thick with tension as the four friends stood at the edge of the dark lake, their hearts racing from the chaos that had just unfolded. Caitlin had nearly drowned, and Brad's brave leap into the water had saved her, but now they were left with a sense of unease that clung to them like the dampness of their clothes. The mansion loomed behind them, its shadows stretching like fingers across the ground, and the storm that had once raged outside had given way to an unsettling stillness. Mary Kate, still clutching the small frog she had rescued, felt its tiny body pulse against her palm, a strange warmth radiating from it. The frog was unlike any she had ever seen. Its skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, casting a soft light that illuminated their anxious faces. The others gathered around her, their curiosity piqued, momentarily forgetting the weight of their mission. What is that? Caitlin whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I don't know, Mary Kate replied, her eyes wide with wonder. But it feels special. The frog blinked slowly, its golden eyes glinting in the dim light. It seemed to sense their apprehension, and for a moment, the world around them faded away, leaving only the four friends and the creature that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Maybe it knows something, Brad suggested, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Maybe it can lead us to Ashley. Or maybe it is just a frog, Caitlin countered, her brow furrowed. We can't just follow it blindly. Mary Kate felt a surge of determination. But what if it is more than that? What if it is connected to this place? She glanced at the lake, its surface still and dark, reflecting the flickering light of the frog. We have to try. With a shared glance, the friends nodded, their resolve solidifying. The frog seemed to sense their decision, and it hopped from Mary Kate's palm to the ground, pausing to look back at them as if beckoning them to follow. Okay, let's see where it leads, Brad said, stepping forward. The others fell in line behind him, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. As they followed the glowing frog, it led them around the edge of the lake, where the shadows of the mansion loomed larger. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the only sound was the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground itself was reluctant to let them pass. The frog hopped ahead, its glow illuminating a narrow passageway hidden behind a thicket of brambles. The friends exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. They had come too far to turn back now. Are you sure about this? Caitlin asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty as they approached the entrance. Do we have a choice? Brad replied, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. We need to find Ashley. With a deep breath, they squeezed through the brambles, the sharp thorns tugging at their clothes. The passage opened into a small clearing, the air suddenly cooler and filled with the scent of moss and wet stone. The frog paused at the center, its glow pulsating rhythmically, casting eerie shadows on the walls of the narrow cave-like space. What now? Mary Kate asked, her heart racing as she looked around. The walls were damp and glistened in the frog's light, revealing strange markings that seemed to swirl and dance like the shadows around them. Maybe we should try talking to it, Caitlin suggested, half joking but with a hint of sincerity. You know, like in those fairy tales. Yeah, right, Brad scoffed, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. What if it really does have something to say? Mary Kate knelt down, her gaze locked onto the frog. Okay, little guy, if you can understand us, can you show us where to find Ashley? The frog blinked slowly, and for a moment, the air felt charged with anticipation. Then, it hopped forward, stopping at the edge of the clearing where the markings on the walls seemed to converge. Look! Mary Kate exclaimed, pointing at the symbols. They're leading somewhere. The friends gathered closer, their eyes tracing the intricate designs. They looked like a map, winding and twisting, but it was hard to tell where it led. Do you think it is a way out? Caitlin asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Or a way deeper in, Brad replied, his brow furrowing. We need to be careful. Mary Kate felt a surge of excitement mixed with dread. What if it is a way to find Ashley? We can't just ignore it. Let's follow it, Caitlin said, her voice steadying. We have to know. With the frog leading the way, they ventured deeper into the passage, the glow illuminating their path. The air grew cooler, and the walls began to close in, the markings becoming more pronounced, almost alive. As they walked, the atmosphere shifted, a palpable tension hanging in the air. The friends exchanged nervous glances, each feeling the weight of their shared fear and hope. Do you think we're getting closer? Mary Kate asked, her voice echoing softly in the confined space. I hope so, Brad replied, his eyes scanning the walls for any sign of Ashley. But what if we're just walking into a trap? Then we'll face it together, Caitlin said, her voice firm. We've come this far. The frog paused at a larger opening, its glow intensifying as it hopped to the center of the room. The friends stepped into the space, their breath catching in their throats as they took in their surroundings. The chamber was vast, the ceiling lost in shadows, and the walls were adorned with more of the swirling symbols. In the center stood a stone pedestal, and atop it rested a small, intricately carved box. What is that? Mary Kate whispered, her heart racing. Only one way to find out, Brad said, stepping forward. As he reached for the box, the frog let out a soft croak, and the air around them seemed to shimmer. The friends froze, a sense of foreboding washing over them. Wait, Caitlin said, her voice trembling. What if it is a warning? But it was too late. Brad's fingers brushed against the box, and a low rumble echoed through the chamber. The ground shook beneath them, and the symbols on the walls began to glow, pulsating in time with the frog's light. Get back! Mary Kate shouted, pulling Caitlin away as the pedestal cracked open, revealing a swirling mist that poured forth like smoke. The frog leapt back, its glow flickering as the mist enveloped the room, swirling around them. Chapter 9. Chapter 9. The Mirror's Truth. The air was thick with tension as Paige, Brad, Caitlin, and Mary Kate stepped through the hidden passageway, their hearts pounding in sync with the echo of their footsteps. The darkened corridor had led them away from the lake, away from the strange glowing frog that had guided them, and deeper into the heart of the mansion. Each friend felt the weight of their mission pressing down on them, a mix of hope and dread swirling in their chests. They were searching for Ashley, but with every step, the shadows seemed to whisper secrets they weren't ready to hear. In the previous chapter, they had stumbled upon the dark lake, where Caitlin's accidental plunge had nearly turned into a tragedy. Brad's brave leap into the water had saved her, but the moment had only heightened their sense of urgency. Now, as they entered the room filled with mirrors, the atmosphere shifted. The air crackled with an electric tension, and the flickering candlelight cast eerie reflections that danced along the walls. Whoa, Caitlin breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. The room was vast, the mirrors lining the walls like sentinels, each one reflecting not just their physical forms but something deeper. Something unsettling. What is this place? It feels wrong, Mary Kate said, her brow furrowing as she stepped closer to one of the mirrors. The surface shimmered, and for a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of movement behind her own reflection. She recoiled, her heart racing. I don't like this. Maybe it is a trick, Brad suggested, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. We need to stay focused. Ashley could be here. Paige stepped forward, her fingers brushing against the cool glass of a mirror that seemed to pulse with a strange light. Look, she said, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. What if these mirrors show us something? Maybe they hold the key to finding Ashley. As if in response, the mirrors began to shimmer more intensely, revealing distorted images of the friends. In one mirror, Caitlin appeared older, her face lined with worry, while in another, Brad looked lost, his eyes filled with a deep sadness that made Paige's heart ache. Mary Kate's reflection showed her laughing, but the laughter was hollow, echoing in the stillness of the room. Stop it, Caitlin shouted, stepping back. This isn't right. We shouldn't be here. Maybe we have to confront what we see, Brad said, his voice low and contemplative. What if these mirrors are showing us our fears? Our regrets? Or our memories? Paige added, her gaze fixed on a mirror that seemed to glow with a soft, inviting light. What if they show us Ashley? With a deep breath, she stepped closer to the glowing mirror, her heart racing. The surface rippled, and suddenly, she was no longer looking at her own reflection. Instead, she saw Ashley, her friend's face illuminated with a warm smile, but there was something in her eyes. Something that hinted at a deeper truth. Ashley. Paige gasped, reaching out as if she could touch her friend through the glass. It's her. But as quickly as the image appeared, it flickered and faded, replaced by a dark void that swallowed the light. Panic surged through Paige, and she stumbled back, colliding with Brad. What just happened? We need to keep looking, he urged, his eyes scanning the room. There has to be more. Caitlin, still shaken, approached another mirror, her breath hitching in her throat. What if these mirrors show us what we're afraid of losing? She murmured, her fingers trembling as she traced the outline of her reflection. What if they show us what we've already lost? As she spoke, the mirror darkened, and a new image emerged. Ashley, but this time she was crying, her face twisted in anguish. Help me, she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet it echoed in the silence of the room. Please. Help me. Caitlin. Mary Kate shouted, grabbing her friend's arm. Don't look. It's not real. But Caitlin was transfixed, her eyes wide with horror. No, it is real. She needs us. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she pressed her palms against the glass, desperate to reach her friend. Ashley, we're coming. We're going to find you. Caitlin, stop. Brad urged, stepping forward to pull her back. We can't get lost in this. We need to stay together. The mirrors began to ripple again, and the room filled with whispers. Fragments of memories and fears swirling around them like a storm. Each friend was confronted with their own reflection, their own truths laid bare. Mary Kate saw herself standing alone, surrounded by darkness, while Brad faced a version of himself that was broken and defeated. Look away. Paige shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony. We can't let it get to us. But the mirrors held a power that was hard to resist. Each reflection seemed to reach out, pulling them deeper into their own insecurities. Caitlin's reflection morphed into a version of herself that was lost and alone, while Mary Kate's laughter turned into a haunting echo that filled the room. Enough. Brad shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. We can't let this consume us. We need to remember why we're here. His words hung in the air, a lifeline amidst the turmoil. Slowly, the mirrors began to settle, the whispers fading into silence. The friends stood together, their breaths heavy with the weight of their fears. Brad's right, Paige said, her voice steadier now. We can't let this place break us. We have to find Ashley. Caitlin wiped her tears, her determination rekindled. We can do this. We just need to focus on her. As they gathered their strength, the mirrors shimmered once more, revealing a new image. A flicker of light in the darkness. It was Ashley, standing in a shadowy corner of the room, her eyes wide with fear. "Help me," she pleaded, her voice echoing through the mirrors. "Please. Don't leave me. Hold on, Ashley." Mary-Kate shouted, her heart racing. "We're coming." With renewed purpose, the friends stepped closer to the mirrors, their hands reaching out as if they could bridge the gap between the reflections and reality. The air around them crackled with energy, and the mirrors began to pulse, revealing glimpses of Ashley's world. A world filled with shadows and whispers, where hope flickered like a candle in the wind. "Together," Brad urged, his voice strong and unwavering. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. They pressed their palms against the glass, and in that moment, the mirrors shattered, sending shards of light cascading around them. The room erupted in a blinding brilliance, and for a heartbeat, they felt a connection. A bond that transcended fear. Chapter 10. Chapter 10. A new beginning. The echoes of their laughter and the warmth of their friendship had been swallowed by the shadows of the mansion, leaving behind a chilling silence that felt almost suffocating. Just moments before, they had stood mesmerized by the reflections in the mirrors, each one revealing fragments of Ashley's essence, flickering like candle flames in the wind. But then, with a deafening crash, the mirrors shattered, plunging them into darkness and uncertainty. Now, as they stumbled through the remnants of their hopes, the weight of their memories began to slip away, like sand through their fingers. "Where are we?" Caitlin's voice trembled, her breath coming in short gasps as she clutched Brad's arm, the only anchor in the swirling chaos. "I don't know," Brad replied, his heart racing. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around them like a shroud. "But we can't lose her. We can't forget." Mary-Kate's eyes darted around, searching for any sign of light, any hint of the way forward. "We have to get out of here. We have to remember Ashley," she urged, her voice rising with urgency. Paige, who had been silent, finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We will remember her. We have to promise each other that." She turned to face her friends, her expression fierce yet vulnerable. "No matter what happens, we'll keep her spirit alive." The darkness seemed to pulse around them, as if the mansion itself was listening, waiting for their next move. They huddled together, the bond forged in fear and uncertainty tightening around them like a lifeline. "Let's go," Brad said, determination igniting in his chest. "We'll find a way out. Together." As they moved cautiously through the remnants of the shattered mirrors, the air grew thick with dust, each breath a reminder of the weight of their memories. They stumbled through the hallways, the echoes of their footsteps mingling with the distant sound of dripping water, a haunting melody that underscored their plight. "Do you think we'll ever find her?" Caitlin asked, her voice barely audible over the oppressive silence. "What if we're too late?" Brad stopped, turning to face her. "We can't think like that. Ashley wouldn't want us to give up. She believed in us." His voice was steady, but inside, doubt gnawed at him like a persistent shadow. Mary-Kate stepped forward, her brow furrowed in thought. "Maybe the mirrors were trying to show us something. Maybe we need to confront our fears to find her." "Confront our fears?" Paige echoed, a hint of skepticism in her tone. "What does that even mean?" "It means we have to face what we're afraid of," Mary-Kate explained, her eyes shining with a fierce light. "We can't let our memories fade. We have to hold on to them, no matter how painful." Caitlin nodded slowly, her expression softening. "You're right. We can't let fear win. We owe it to Ashley." With renewed resolve, they pressed on, navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of their shared memories pressing down on them. They passed through rooms filled with dust-covered furniture, remnants of a life long forgotten. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay, a stark reminder of the passage of time. Suddenly, they heard a faint sound. A whisper, barely audible, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. They paused, exchanging glances, their hearts racing. "Did you hear that?" Brad asked, his voice low. Caitlin nodded, her eyes wide with fear. It sounded like Ashley. Let's follow it, Paige urged, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. It might lead us to her. They moved cautiously toward the sound, their hearts pounding in unison. The whisper grew louder, more distinct, guiding them through the darkness. As they turned a corner, they found themselves in a small room, the walls lined with faded photographs. In the center of the room stood a single, unbroken mirror, its surface gleaming in the dim light. The whispering intensified, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. Look, Mary-Kate said, pointing to the mirror. It's showing us something. They gathered around, their breath hitching in their throats as the mirror began to shimmer. Images flickered across its surface. Memories of laughter, of shared secrets, of moments that defined their friendship. And then, amidst the joyful scenes, they saw her. Ashley, smiling, her eyes sparkling with life. Ashley! Caitlin cried, reaching out as if she could touch her through the glass. We're here. We're coming for you. But as they watched, the image began to fade, replaced by shadows that danced across the mirror's surface. The whispering grew frantic, echoing their fears and doubts. Don't let her go, Brad shouted, his voice breaking. We can't lose her again. In that moment, the mirror shattered, the sound reverberating through the room like a thunderclap. They stumbled back, fear coursing through them as shards of glass rained down around them. Stay together, Mary-Kate shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. We can't let this tear us apart. As the last remnants of the mirror fell to the ground, the room plunged into darkness once more. The whispering ceased, leaving behind an eerie silence that felt almost suffocating. Where are we? Caitlin's voice trembled, panic creeping in. We're still here, Brad said, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. We're still together. But even as he spoke, he felt the memories of Ashley slipping away, like grains of sand through his fingers. We have to remember her. We have to hold on to her spirit. Paige stepped forward, her expression fierce. We will remember her. We'll keep her alive through our friendship. No matter what happens, we'll carry her with us. With that, they joined hands, forming a circle in the darkness. The warmth of their connection pulsed between them, a lifeline in the void. On 3, Brad said, his voice steady. 1, 2, 3. Together, they shouted Ashley's name, their voices rising in unison, echoing through the darkness. The sound reverberated around them, filling the void with their shared love and determination. And then, as if in response, a soft light began to glow in the distance. It flickered like a candle flame, illuminating the path ahead. Look! Mary-Kate exclaimed, her eyes wide with hope. It's a way out. They rushed toward the light, their hearts pounding with renewed purpose. As they emerged from the darkness, they found themselves back in the woods, the familiar sounds of the night enveloping them. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the trees.